Good morning, everyone. This is Kathy Mason from Mason Works Marketing here on Conscious Business Zone with my buddy, Becky.
Yay!
Okay, so first of all, I got to ask, how hard is it having a hyphenated last name?
Oh, it's ridiculous. It is ridiculous. See, I had this business for 32 years and it was called Austill's Rehabilitation Services, but I got married in the beginning. And so my last name became Clausen. So it was Rebecca Clausen at Austill's Rehab. And I'm like, this is not good. It wasn't good marketing. And my husband said, well, Becky, why don't you hyphenate your name? And I'm like, oh, that's a great idea. So for work, I was Rebecca Austill. And for our kids, I was Rebecca Clausen. And so that worked. But as far as everything else, it's ridiculous.
Well, I remember in high school taking a class that was the book was called Montage.
Uh-huh.
And there was a paragraph, I don't know, it was maybe a short story of these hyphenated people marrying hyphenated people, and their kids married hyphenated people. And so names
4 names for your child.
So everyone, you can see we have fun, you guys. So just so you know, Becky is Rebecca.
Becky's fine.
Is an international speaker. She's a Reiki Master, which is what we'll talk about. Part of her incredible capacity to heal and to help others through her sixth sense, if you want to call it that. And she's an author, and we'll talk a little bit about her book and about her unique experience that she had having a combined, I forget what exactly they call it, a near-death experience with her brother. And she's also an occupational therapist. So we can run the full gamut. And we'll talk more about how we're going to be together in a couple weeks. But Becky, let's help the audience learn a little bit about you and tell them how you got started. Now, first we know how you got your hyphenated name, but you guys, the other part about Becky is that her energy is as big as Texas. She is so full of love. She's a great cheerleader. Whenever I'm down and I'm in a group that I feel beat up with, Becky's like, "You are great. You are."
I only speak the truth, and you are great, Kathy, and it's a blast being with you. It's like a total blast. You're excellent.
Well, the thing is that when you look at people and their worldview, Becky has a worldview that the cup is almost completely full, not half full, and that she's looking for life to verify that reality, correct?
Kathy, that is magnificent, and that's why you're awesome. Yes.
Oh. Okay, so people can get to know you. Could you tell us a little about your journey so that they can get your journey from occupational therapist to Reiki Master, and then we can talk about the rest of it? Okay.
Sure. Okay. And first of all, thank you so very much for having me talk with you again. I love being with you, Kathy.
Me
thank
too.
You very much.
Ditto. Yeah, I can't wait to be in person.
So same here. So what happened with me is I do have a fair amount of energy. And so I'm always doing multiple things at the same time. And gosh, I became an OT a long time ago. And I kept going from job to job to job to job. And when I was at about the age of 30, I decided to start my own business, which actually grew. I had it for 32 years, and it grew to have a staff of 350 occupational therapy practitioners, physical therapy, and speech language pathology. And we ended up servicing over 100,000 people. Right in the middle of this private practice and growing this private practice, it was in 1995. My brother David passed, and he was 37 years old, and I couldn't understand why he passed. It made no sense to me at all. I believe everything in life is positive, and I could find nothing positive about the fact that my 37-year-old brother died of AIDS. And it just didn't make sense. There's a variety of things we can talk about, but the part that I enjoy talking about probably the most is 6 weeks after he passed. I'm filled with grief, couldn't understand it, and I had a horse, and I was riding my horse through a Christmas tree farm it's a Boston accent. You'll hear the Boston accent quite enough through this next conversation. But anyway, I was riding my horse through a Christmas tree farm and received the best present of my life. It was a beautiful day. David, my brother, passed on October 1st, 10/1. And this was the middle of November. And I was riding this horse in Chester Springs, Pennsylvania, and we had just had our first frost. Rainbows were sparkling, icicles were hanging from the trees, and I opened up my heart just a little bit. And you know, when you're so filled with grief, your heart's closed and all you can feel is the grief. But that day I opened up my heart and I said, "Thank you, universe, for a beautiful day." I closed my eyes and there was my brother. He was in human form. He was wearing a black and red plaid flannel shirt, dungarees, and sandals. And I had never, ever, ever done, experienced, felt anything like this before. I was not psychic. I wasn't spiritual. And so I started to talk with him and realized within a split second, I could just send thought. He was great. I was great. I'm like, oh my gosh, here's my brother. And I looked to the right, and there were my grandparents, Abe and Bessie Dole from Wellesley, Massachusetts. They had passed about 10 years ago. They were holding hands like they always did. Beside them was one of David's best friends, our family friend Edward, who had passed, a friend of mine, Holly, who had passed 20 years ago in a motor vehicle accident. And there were about 24 other people that I knew had passed on the hill. And I looked back to my brother, and behind my brother was a golden arch. Now, it wasn't McDonald's. It wasn't a McDonald arch. It was a golden arch. And I had been reading a fair amount of books about the afterlife, trying to figure out this whole concept of my brother dying. And so I had read that if you see a door and you feel comfortable, go through it. So I looked to David to see if he was going to take me through this golden colored arch that was behind him. And my 4'10" grandma, Bessie Dole, she takes me by the hand and we skip through this golden covered arch. On the other side was a brilliant fuchsia colored land. Now, my husband and I, Jeff and I, have 2 children, 2 wonderful sons, and their name is Kenny and Ryan. And Kenny and Ryan now are in their 30s, and they say to me when as you can imagine, they've heard this story multiple times. They say, "Mom, do not say fuchsia colored land." And I'm like, "Well, why not?" Because it sounds like you're tripping. It sounds like you're high. It sounds like you're not normal. And I'm like, well, it was fuchsia. And so anyway, I'm in this fuchsia colored land and I hear my paternal grandfather, because my grandma and grandpa were on my mom's side. And then my paternal, my dad's grandfather, had passed about 15 years ago. I didn't see him. I heard him. And he says, "Get over here," in a very loving, beautiful fashion. And he takes me by the hand and we fly through this fuchsia colored land, holding hands, reminiscing, being thrilled to be with each other. And all of a sudden, my horse starts to move. So my horse is moving. And I am flying through this fuchsia colored land with Gramps. And I say, "Gramps, I need to go back." And he immediately does a U-turn. We do a U-turn in this fuchsia colored land. He brings me right back to the golden arch. I fly through the fuchsia colored land in front of my brother. The horse is moving. And I say, "David, I need to go back." And you know what he said? And everybody that was there, my grandparents, Edward, Holly, these 24 other people, they all said at the exact same time, "We will always be here." I pulled up the reins and sat on my horse and thought, what just happened with me? And so it really was quite an amazing experience. I'm going to continue just a little bit more if you don't mind.
No, perfect.
I had no idea what this was. And so I went to the library. Now, this is 1995. We didn't really have the internet. I didn't really have a laptop. I didn't know how to search anything except for going to the library. So I went to the library and started to walk up and down the corridors. And I believe what I thought would happen is that the book that would explain this would fall out of the shelf. Well, that didn't happen. So I'm like, well, that's sort of interesting. And so I went to a local health food store and looked at the bulletin board and thought, well, maybe I'll find someone that might be able to assist me. And nothing resonated. I'm the type of person that makes things happen, and I don't usually ask for assistance. At that point, I asked, and I asked the universe, I said, would you please send me a teacher? And then I let it go. A couple of weeks later, a good friend of mine, Amy Carroll, Dr. Amy Carroll, she's an occupational therapist. She now teaches at the Thomas Jefferson University Occupational Therapy Department in Philadelphia. And she's fantastic. And she was on my staff at the time as an OT. And so Amy came in and I didn't tell hardly anybody any of this that had happened. And she says, Becky, how are you doing? And I said, well, it's rough. And she said, I met somebody I think you'd like. And I'm, who's that? And she said, I met a shaman. Now, reading all these books about the afterlife, I had come across the word shaman, but I really didn't know what it was. And if there was a shaman, I thought maybe it lived in Brazil or Peru or something. And so I said, a shaman? What's a shaman? And Amy says, well, I'm not really quite sure, but they believe that everything natural has energy. And she talks to people that have passed on. And at that point, I thought, okay. And her name's Nancy Ariel. She did pass a couple of years ago, but I ended up apprenticing with Nancy 3 to 6 hours a week for 1 year.
Wow.
And that's how this whole journey started.
Wow. Wow. So, do you believe that all of this was planned by you before you embodied?
Kathy, that's an interesting question. Yes. And not only by me, I believe it was planned by myself and my brother David. And to me, he had the toughest part because he had to pass. And it took him 7 years. He was at the time considered a long-term survivor, where now people with AIDS don't really die. But at that point, I mean, for the older folks in the audience, I'm sure you'll remember when thousands and thousands of people were dying essentially every week that had AIDS. And David had to live with it for 7 years. But yes, I do believe this was the plan. Interesting question, Kathy.
Right. So now you learn from a shaman about a whole new way of being. How did you integrate that into your regular life? Because that seems to be there's a kind of a skill to that integration. Don't you agree?
Kathy, you are so smart. Man, I enjoy you so much.
Oh, thank you.
That's an excellent question. It felt like I had two parts in my brain. I had my business part, which human relations, profit and loss, financial,
Yeah.
marketing, social media, all of this. And then I had the other part that was spiritual, that believed that we live forever, that our consciousness remains, that when we die, our consciousness continues. So we're still alive. And so I had these two parts of my brain going on. And the way I did it was with time. Like I would wake up in the morning and I would go to work. At that point, I was going to work about 3:00 in the morning. And so I would work from like 3 to 7. Then I would ride my horse, and I would ride my horse from 7 to 11. And I'd meditate on the horse, and I'd have my spiritual experiences, and I would write them down, and then I would go back to work. So I had this ability to just keep focused on one part or the other. But the longer I became involved in spirituality, the more integrated it became.
Yeah. So tell me, because one of the times that I went to Co-Creators Convergence, which someday I'll explain that all to you. We went to an equine therapy location and did this process with these horses. It was so magical. Do you think your horse also was set up in this whole pre-planning? Because that therapy is so grounding and so pure essence of consciousness.
Yes. And Kathy, you're the first person that asked me, and I've been doing this since 1995. You're the first person that's asked me if my horse was like prearranged, which I actually believe that it was.
Yeah.
I know the horse was meditating with me, and I didn't even really know that I was meditating, because at that point I was just doing deep breathing. I mean, that's what I do. I just close my eyes, take a couple of deep breaths, release, and then receive peace, and release some more, and receive joy, and release some more, and receive love. And I would do that on the horse like about 7 times, meaning at 7 different points during an hour and a half ride. I would be meditating with the horse, and the horse would relax, and her ears would calm down, and she would just be very quiet. And it was awesome. It was really awesome. So yes, I do believe the horse was handpicked for me. Astra, A-S-T-R-E was her name, which means star. So cool question.
Cool. Well, yeah, because I think that we're really coming to a point of that everything you do can be a living meditation, and the fun or the adventure of the game that we're in, which I see this as a game, is to be able to stay in that state and presence in everything.
Yes.
And so that's what you were learning, is how to integrate that part of you that is so expanded that it sees the benefit of everything and the opportunity to learn from everything, rather than the fearful judgmental side. And I think my audience, you're a great example of how to access that, because you can do it in walking meditations. That's what Nick-Tan Han,
Yes.
he has a walking meditation. I mean, there's so many masters that didn't say you had to sit in a cave on a pillow for the rest of your life and eat bugs, and wear funny clothes to capture the essence of the divine. It's a new way. It's an active way.
Kathy, you are so fun. And yes, that is how it is. And gosh, it's been 27 years, and now I feel like I have embraced the wholeness of that philosophy. And so I'm in it. Like, I'm in it. Now, sometimes I'll get a little bit out of it, particularly when I'm going through hundreds of emails and just going through them all. But most of the time I'm in it. And it's so fun to be able to access that continuity of consciousness always. It's really fun.
Do you call on see, I call on the masters, teachers, and guides, and Saint Germain, and I have a 12th dimensional angel that I work with, but I don't really call on my ancestor, my family, the family that I've known. Do you call on them, or do you, through Reiki, work with a whole different set of beings?
Oh, Kathy, you are so fun. Really.
Making it work a little bit, huh?
It's great.
I want to know.
I rarely call on people. I wait for them to come to me. And maybe in the beginning, I don't even think in the beginning I did that. It is for me so exciting to see who wants to come. There's a experience that I wanted to share that will sort of answer that question a little bit. I went to, after I had been with this shaman for about 4 months, I went to the American Occupational Therapy Association annual conference, and I had no filter. And I was pretty involved organizationally, and it probably put me back about 10 years organizationally, because I was pretty far out. This was 1996, and people were not into New Age, holistic services, near death, continuity of spirit. They weren't into that. And I was pretty liberal with what I was talking about. The last day at the conference, I went to some presentation, and I sat beside a nun. I thought, well, this will be interesting. I wonder what a nun feels about the world. And within 5 minutes, she told me that she went to someone that taught her automatic writing. And I said, well, what's that? I don't know what automatic writing is. And she said, it's when you're in meditation and you have a pen in your hand. At that point, pretty much everything was pen, paper and pen. And you have a pen in your hand, and your pen automatically starts writing messages. And I'm like, you're kidding. And she said she had just gone to New York and a psychologist had taught her this. So this was on a Friday. I went back home that day, went out with my horse on Saturday, had meditations, came back into my car. I used to write all the meditations at the very end of riding my horse. So I'm writing the meditations, and all of a sudden, my pen starts to move out without my volition. And I thought, oh my gosh, I can either freak out and it'll probably stop, or I can keep going. And it was absolutely incredible. And essentially, it said it had a poem. And I, at that point, I was not into poetry. I was pretty objective about life. And it had some poem about the heavens above and the earth below. And I'm like, this is not me. Who are you? And the answer was, I am love. Now, also at that point, I didn't understand the broadness of love. I thought love was just between two partners, two couples, whatever. And I said, love. And I wrote love, question mark. And this spirit said, I am Lot, L-O-T. And so then he went on and for me, it was a masculine presence. And so Lot went on and he wrote about a page and a half, and it was all very similar. Very similar to if you've read Conversations with God, Neil Donald Walsh, very, very similar to that. And so I'm like, wow, this is pretty interesting. So the next day I go into meditation, Lot came. And third day I went into meditation, Lot came. And by the fifth day, the energy was very fast. And so I was shaking my hand because I was writing so rapidly. And Lot writes, why don't you use your computer? And I'm like, my computer? Like, that seems so weird to me, because for me, Lot was an ancient being. And to bring a computer into this automatic writing seemed quite incongruous. But I am a good typist. I type fast. And at that point, I was typing about 90 words a minute. And Lot said, it'll be much faster for you. So I was at the house at this time. And I went downstairs and got my computer, brought it up, sat at the dining room table. Sun's shining, and I closed my eyes, put my hands on the computer keyboard in ready position, and oh my gosh, Kathy, the information just flowed. And so Lot stayed with me for every single day. Every single day, Lot stayed and communicated for about 4 months. And my husband would sit right beside me at times, and he would say, Becky, ask Lot this. And I'd be, Jeff, you can ask him. He said, no, you ask. And so I would type out whatever Jeff says. And it was very practical, objective, loving information. And at that point, that's when a fair amount of beings started to come through other than Lot. And after about 4 months, Lot left. And I said, and he told me he was going to leave. And I said, well, why are you leaving? He says, there's hundreds of people, hundreds of spirits that want to come through. And so it's been really exciting to be open to receive whatever the universe has to offer.
Oh, that's so cool. So I want to ask about your experience with people healing and how much of their thoughts are part of their illness or their pain, their suffering, I guess is the right word, and how much is actually physical, because you're working from an occupational therapist view. You hear the story, but when you're doing Reiki, you don't necessarily have to hear the story. You can just go, okay, I see some gray stuff there, poof. You can play with their aura, their energy fields, and just yank it out, throw it over there, transmute it, use it for something else. How much of this is their thoughts and their worldview and their story that you're finding, and how much of it is something that it's all energetic?
You are so smart. Gosh, Kathy, that's a cool question. I do believe that positive thought facilitates positive action, which facilitates positive growth, which facilitates positive behavior. So that's what I believe. And when you said in the beginning of your introduction that, yes, my cup is essentially overflowing, that's how I live my life. And so when people have or feel negativity, it does bring us down energetically, it brings us down physically. I'm not saying that it always brings us down, but it certainly doesn't help. And so I always try very hard to encourage people to look at the positive aspects of an issue. Now, there's a lot of issues happening these days. It's absolutely wild. And I totally believe that we've all chosen to be here at this time
Me
to
too.
help heal, to help the world heal, to help share peace and love. But there is a lot of trauma that's happening, and I do believe there's ways that we can improve our own feeling and the feelings of others.
Hmm. Well, the reason I was asking is that there's so many people that are really following Dr. Joe
Yes,
Dispenza's work
yes,
and Dr. Bruce Lipton's work,
yes,
where it's biology of belief is what Dr. Bruce Lipton did, and Joe Dispenza's got so many things, being supernatural, and forget what Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself is a
yes.
great book. So how much of that do you find that when you're helping somebody, that you're actually using change their thoughts? Like even Mike Dooley
Mhm.
did a whole thing, Thoughts Are Things. I love
Yeah,
that too. So how much of that is part of your healing practice when you work with people?
good question. A fair amount. The thing that happens for me is that I'm an active listener. And so I'm not going to say what I think someone should believe. I'm going to listen and then ask, just like you're doing with me, ask interesting questions to help them possibly look at another way to look at the issue that is bringing them down. The thing that I use mostly is Reiki, and I hope you're okay if I move into a
Sure.
little bit of a conversation about Reiki. Reiki is universal life force energy, and when I was first being trained by Nancy, by my shaman, Nancy Ariel, she used Reiki in order to, bring my energy up so that I could travel and do what's called shamanic journeying. And about 3 or 4 months, yeah, it was about 3 or 4 months after I had these weekly sessions with Nancy, a friend of mine, an occupational therapist, Michael Peasy, Dr. Michael Peasy, was putting on a state-of-the-art holistic conference. And the fact that he was an OT helped me because I knew I was getting far out. I didn't know anybody that was doing anything like me. And I'm like, okay, if Michael Peasy is doing this, and he was president of the New York OT Association at the time, and I was president of the Delaware OT Association at the time, and then I became vice president of all the presidents for oh, I'm so sorry. That was me. Shoot. I meant to turn that off. So sorry. Anyway, I became vice president of all the OT presidents. And so I knew a lot of, Michael's colleagues, and I respected him immensely. So he's putting on this state of the art holistic conference. And during that conference, an occupational therapist named Anne Marie McClintock was teaching Reiki. And I thought, okay, let me go to this occupational therapy conference where there was psychologists, physicians, researchers, PTs, OTs, speech, case managers, social workers, all these different disciplines, and see how it goes. And I started out by going to learn Reiki, and you can learn Reiki in one day, which is really quite extraordinary because Reiki, the idea with Reiki is that we all have energy. So we all have energy, which we can access. And so you can learn how to do that easily. And when I teach Reiki, because I teach it both in person and online, there's a picture that I use from this exact conference. And they had exhibitors there, and someone was taking pictures of your aura. Now, at that point, I didn't even know if I believed in an aura, the energy that surrounds
Yeah.
us that we can see, and it's just different colors and things like that. So I said, okay, why don't you take my picture? And so I have this picture, and it was right before I learned Reiki and right in the beginning of the conference. And I'm sort of smirking, and I'm not really like looking too interested in it. And quite frankly, part of my aura was missing. So that was sort of interesting. So after about 3 days of going to the conference, learning Reiki, being filled with love and joy and understanding how our thoughts can help us heal and how we can help heal our body, learned all sorts of things, shiatsu, polarity, like all sorts of things. I decided to go back to this aura photography exhibit. And I'm relaxed, I'm smiling. And when I looked at my aura this second time, it was totally complete. And I'm like, whoa, in 3 days to actually have a physical representation of a change in our energy was really quite astounding. So it's been really fun to teach people how to access your own healing energy. And it was quite something. I had taught it quite a bit personally, and I got ready to write a book, and I almost pulled out about what was happening to me, and I almost pulled out the fact that I was an occupational therapist because I wanted to share with people that they could learn how to talk with their deceased loved ones. But I didn't know if it was a good idea for people who read this book to think maybe all occupational therapy practitioners talk with dead people. I'm like, I don't know if that's a good idea.
I know it. I mean, but you have to think, I have this go through a lot with my clients and stuff. It's like, should I bring in the woo or not?
Right.
And it's like, you got to know, you can't hide the woo. Once you've seen the expandedness of consciousness and the availability of energy, and the way you can master your experience here, it's almost impossible to hide that. Now, people might not know and be able to verbalize what it is, that they don't know, but they sense it because you're again, you're not in fear.
Right.
That's the real key to all of this, is that we're in a time of so much polarity and I think manipulated contrast in the media, and people picking judgments and protecting their judgments, that it's a time of really constructed unrest that is to keep things chaotic. That the idea of having a tool like meditation and Reiki and a tool at your disposal to change, to be empowered, to do what you want to do that feels better, because the other doesn't feel good, right?
Agreed.
Yeah, this is the time. Well, the other thing is that it feels like also that the ancients, because of their connection to the earth and their knowledge of how this system works, that's kind of the period we're into, the remembering. We've been in the dark ages where science ruled all, rational thought, left brain thought, and the reptilian brain rules everything. And now we're coming back into this science and spirituality meeting again, where there's a holistic view and a bigger opportunity to integrate, right?
Yes, and integrative health now, in my opinion, is considered the gold standard.
Yeah.
Integrating complementary health modalities with traditional allopathic medical care. And it's so fun. It's so fun to see that change happening on a national, if not a worldwide level.
Right.
Yes,
Right.
it's fantastic.
Well, I'm doing a marketing plan for someone, and I just found the statistics, and it's off the charts. It's not just the baby boomers; everybody is coming to it, and a new awareness. And it's partially because people like Dr. Joe Dispenza is bringing in the awareness that quantum physics is real.
Yes.
And that we really have so much of our five senses are only experiencing less than 1% of what's here.
Yes.
And so your sixth sense is available to you. And maybe as we evolve as a species, more senses will be available to us. That's what my hope is.
Yes.
And that's where then you are seeing and experiencing the other dimensions, right?
Agreed. Absolute 100% agree. Yes.
Yeah. So your generosity in teaching Reiki is very heartwarming to me, because I really want to empower people. I really want them to wake up to who they really are and their divinity, and using a tool like Reiki, where you Reiki, Qigong, Tai Chi, some of these and ancient energy medicines that these cultures had hundreds, thousands of years ago, that we forgot, bringing them back into a modern age where Reiki is now used in hospitals, and there's medical spas now where there's one MD, like even the Mayo Clinic and John Hopkins has medical spas. I mean, it's so important that people know that their choices are much more vast than take a drug, get cut,
That's it. In 2017, the American Hospital Association did a study of complementary health modalities that are being provided in hospitals, and it was 42% in 2017. 42% were providing complementary modalities, including Reiki. And so the trick sort of this is hospitals have them. I mean, that's almost 1 out of 2 hospitals are providing complementary modalities, whether it's Reiki, yoga, Qigong, Tai Chi, massage, whatever. You want to ask. So if you're going in for an operation or, a wellness check or whatever, feel free to ask, do you have complementary health modalities? Do you have Reiki or yoga, or what do you have? The complementary modalities are used very often in cancer clinics, and a lot of it's volunteer. And so it's really quite lovely to be able to assist people that are going through active chemo and radiation and such, and provide them with a way to help their inner soul heal. Because the chemo helps with the physical, but Reiki and the complementary modalities definitely help with the emotional. And it's very, very nice.
Yeah, I love the idea that there's because we're all so different in our worldview. I mean, someone said to me last week, well, there's 8 billion people on this planet, and there's 8 billion different holograms and worldviews. And when you go to that, it's like, wow, how do we ever get anything done if we're all seeing the world totally different? And then the thing that we're going to talk about in a little bit is how ions offers a way for all of us to come together and be in the bubble of consciousness, source, infinite intelligence, whatever we want to call it. But that's what, if everyone starts looking and having responsibility for their worldview, and then takes responsibility for their own vehicle and using it, that's the other part of this that's quite remarkable. And thank you so much for all of that work that you've done, because you've created a way for people in conferences to come a day early or 2 days early and actually get to take home a certification, right?
Right. It's a certificate. It's a certificate that they receive that is, because really there's 2 major levels of Reiki. There's Reiki level 1, and that's where you get your energy, what's called attuned. So you get your energy activated. And whenever you learn Reiki, you always want to learn it from someone that has experiential sessions. So it's not just a mind philosophy. You actually want to try healing other people. And I always have at least 3 healing sessions, one-on-one with, all the people, having individual one-on-one healing sessions with at least 3 different partners. So that's Reiki 1. And Reiki 2 is when you actually understand long distance healing, and you learn different clinical techniques and hand positions and all of that. It's been so exciting to teach people Reiki, and I was very thrilled to be the first person to teach Reiki at the American Occupational Therapy Association annual conference. And that started in 2015. And I have to say, every single year since 2015 for the in-person conferences, I've been teaching Reiki at AOTA, and it's been very nicely received. So Reiki, just on an occupational therapy note, is part of our practice since 2005, because
Wow.
there's a whole component of occupational therapy that deals with spirituality. And it's been really, really fun to be a cheerleader for the complementary health component of occupational therapy. So it's been delightful.
Well, I think that's so cool because it really is the missing part of our society right now. I mean, we grew up in a similar age group that you had a headache, take an aspirin.
Right.
I mean, it was like this instant better life through drugs, and so we were kind of brainwashed that that symptoms didn't mean anything. But when you go back to the energetics of it, it's a whole different worldview of your responsibility and the care of your vehicle. I mean, this is like Avatar, the movie, where they got into those, that guy got into the body. This is what our soul did, or got into this vehicle, right?
Absolutely. You know, Kathy, I used to take 4 to 6 Excedrin, extra strength Excedrin every single day until I learned Reiki. And after a year, well, it was even after about 4 months, I realized, oh my gosh, I don't have headaches anymore. I'm like, wow. Well, why is that? And as you say, when you learn how to take care of your vehicle, your stress can reduce. And there's a wonderful study. It's 2019 of 1,411 people received one session of Reiki all across the United States. And it was done by 99 Reiki masters, all trained the same way, and statistically significant reductions in pain, stress, anxiety, depression, shortness of breath, and an increase in well-being occurred. And this study is available for free, and it's in the Journal of Alternative and Complementary Medicine, published by Dyer Baldwin, and gosh, there's one other person. And I'm sorry, I'm blanking on the third person, but you just look up Dyer Reiki, and you'll get this study, the Journal of Alternative and Complementary Medicine. It's good.
That's perfect. Well, again, that goes back to the quantum physics, all of
Yes.
the stuff that we're talking about, that there is a system in place that is life affirming. It works for all the animals, all the plants. It works for all the insects. It works for everything else. We just forgot. Our access. And with Reiki training and energy knowledge, you can be empowered to help yourself with, and it's portable. You don't have to run and go to or get on Amazon and have it delivered tomorrow. You can actually do it yourself, right? So what's the difference between a Reiki practitioner and a master? How do you get to be a master?
You know, I think it's hilarious, the name Reiki Master. I'm like, oh, for Pete's sakes.
Master.
So you're a Reiki practitioner if you're Reiki 1, Reiki 2, and then for me, I require people to have at least 6 months of practice and service, providing all sorts of Reiki after they've received Reiki level 2. And then I teach a 1-day Reiki master course. Now, some people will teach it faster than that. Some people will say you must have years of experience. I waited 10 years. I really wanted to embrace the whole philosophy before I had it. And just to pause just for a minute, the third author of that excellent Reiki study is Rand. So it's Dyer, D-Y-E-R, Baldwin, and Rand. And that's where you can get the Reiki study. Okay. So thanks for giving me that chance to fix my brain here.
Well, I think that's, again, this is the perfect example. So many people with these new energies, because you're in a different dimensional concept, and frequency, and your memories are back there. It takes a little while for the Rolodex to pull through. Like, you'll remember somebody's face and you remember their first name, but their last name comes later. And this isn't like the old days where you woke up at 2:00 in the morning and went, that's it. This is just, you just have to know it's coming. It's just deeper in the Rolodex than it used to be, right?
You're very kind, Kathy.
No, I think it's true. You're not alone. I do that too. That's all I'm saying. That I think that we're the capacity to be at a higher vibration doesn't necessarily bring those old programs and memories along with it, because they're heavier. They're even you remembering that it's attached to having to only use this for survival. Yes. And now you're using this for survival.
The heart
or the combination, until you're Dantian all the way.
Absolutely. That was well said. I love being a heart-based person rather than just our mind. It's really awesome. It's very, very exciting. Well said, Kathy.
That's cool. Okay, so being a master means that you...
Oh, sorry.
No, I just want to make sure that people understand that this isn't a long weekend course and then you get a practitioner's thing, because I have taken those before for $900 or $1,000 and a long weekend. You can be a healing practitioner of some modalities, and they work just fine. But this isn't the same. This is much more capacity to prove to yourself that you're making a difference, and then also embody that energy so that your field carries it, because that's the remembrance, right?
Yes. And not only is it important for you to acknowledge the oneness of all life, it's important for you to be able to help facilitate others heal. And it's not, this is an interesting point, it's not that a Reiki practitioner or a Reiki master provides the healing. They facilitate it, but it's each person's own body that heals. So all we do is take the energy from the universe. It goes through us like an empty bamboo rod. It goes right through us, right to the person. And then it's the person's own body that heals. And we always ask permission before we offer healing. And it's quite interesting, because I've done a lot of work with hospice. And so many times with hospice, I had quite a bit of experience working on a unit where people were actively dying, where they would define that as being expected to pass within 3 to 7 days. And so you think, well, how do you get permission if someone is sort of in a very deep sleep? And so what you can do is you ask, and you ask silently, and you ask with energetic love, is it all right if I provide you with Reiki? And you want to be well connected with yourself in order to do this. But you ask, and if you receive no answer, it's okay. If you receive yes, it's okay. But once in a while, you'll receive a no. And if you receive a no, then you just don't do it. And that's how you can do Reiki long distance as well. It doesn't mean it just has to be done on hospice. You can actually do it long distance over the internet. And there's all sorts of validations about how successful sending energy long distance, which is what you learn in Reiki level 2, works. And so it's really quite exciting to be able to share that. But essentially you only need to be a Reiki level 2 practitioner, and that's all you really need. The Reiki master means you're an advanced clinician and or you're a teacher of Reiki. But even just Reiki 1 is totally fine. It's very exciting. And one of the other exciting things about Reiki is because we're accessing all this energy, it helps us communicate with our loved ones that have passed on. And that, for me, is one of the prime joys of teaching Reiki, because it fits in so nicely with my belief that we live forever. And Reiki can help us with that.
Oh, that's wonderful. So one other quick question about Reiki, about the symbols
Yes,
that are given. Okay, so could you tell a little bit about the value of those symbols?
sure. There I've often thought, why is it that we can learn Reiki so fast? Like what is going on here? How can we learn to help heal ourselves and others with one day? And what happened is there's a fellow by the name of Miko Yasui, and Miko is from Japan. And he was a monk and a Buddhist monk, and he wanted to find Satori. He wanted to find the meaning of life. He wanted to find what makes the world tick. And so he climbed the highest mountain in Japan, Mount Kuryama, and he went on what we would call these days a vision quest. And there's sort of a philosophy that on the 21st day he received 3 healing symbols, and he was not essentially a healer before then, but these symbols are what he started to use in his Yasui form of healing, Yasui form of Reiki. So you have these 3 symbols that when you get attuned in Reiki level 1, you get these 3 symbols placed in your aura. These symbols are used by millions and millions of people. And so when you think about the energetic power of symbols being used all over the world for healing, for energetic relief, for wellness, for long distance healing, all these people that are trained in the Yasui form of Reiki, which is now millions of people, these symbols have power. And so when you have them put into your aura, all of a sudden you're accessing all this energetic power, and it makes it work fast.
Wow.
And it's really quite astounding to see how people feel when they first get attuned. And I don't talk to people about what I think they're going to say. I just say, so how do you feel? And it really is quite fascinating, because a lot of people feel instantly changed. And then we immediately, at least the way I teach it, we immediately go into healing. And you've already learned how to help yourself heal using the different energy chakra centers in your body. And then you start healing others. And I teach it very quickly. So I teach healing in about 5-minute sessions, because as an occupational therapist or any medical practitioner, nurses, psychologists, whatever, we don't have a lot of time if we're going
Right.
to use it as part of our session. And so you really can impact a person with just a couple of minutes. So it's really quite fun. And you use these symbols. So you use these symbols in the healing, and you're interacting with all the millions and millions of people that are using these same symbols, and it jumpstarts that healing process.
Wow. Well, I wish I could take your class. We're going to talk now about a little bit about ions, but I'm in charge of the exhibitor setup.
You
So
certainly are.
get to take it again. So we'll have to figure out how I get to take it someday. But I'm going to show the website real quick, and then we can talk a little bit, because Becky has a lot of different hats that she wears at the IONS year annual conference, which is our big fundraiser. IONS stands for International Association for Near-Death Studies, and we're both volunteers extraordinaire.
Especially you.
No, whatever. But let me pull this up real quick. And what I want you to do is, if you can, explain a little bit about what you're offering for your class, but also if you can talk a little bit about the healers.
Sure, I'd love to.
Okay, so here we go. Here we go.
The International Association for Near-Death Studies, to me, is a phenomenal group of medical professionals, researchers, educators, nurses, anybody that's had a near-death experience, and people that are supportive of the fact that and the belief that consciousness survives bodily death. It's amazing how many presentations we have. This conference is coming up in Washington, D.C., and it's I believe it's Arlington, Virginia. Sometimes I get it a little confused, but I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure it's Arlington, Virginia. It's 5 minutes from Washington. Yeah, it's a 4-day conference, 11 workshops. There's a movie. There's a veteran supportive program. And there's 2 pre-conference workshops. There's one that I'm doing, which is on Wednesday, August 30th. And it's a 1-day course, 9 to 4:30, certificate provided, Reiki level 1. And Peter Panagore is also doing a wonderful pre-conference workshop. And it's on how you access your heart and how you access it's heart, and there's another H one. Well, he's talking about your heart and maybe your mind. Could be your mind and your heart, but it all works together. And then there are multiple additional workshops that are being provided. There's over 100 presentations, and gosh, it's really going to be quite something. So you register by going to IANDS.org, and then you'll get the link to the conference. Please feel free to come to the conference. If you can come on site, it's a blast. This is going to be the largest conference IANDS has ever had, and you can access it both in person and online. And so if you're not able to come to the in-person, access it online. And we started doing it online during COVID, and it worked. And so now this one's a combination. It's in-person and online, and it's going to be phenomenal. So you have all these different workshops, you have all these different presentations, lots of different activities, music, meditation. Kathy's in charge of the exhibits. The exhibits are great. So please come to the exhibits. We have a fun floor. It's called the 14th floor. And that's where Kathy's going to be with the exhibits. That's where Reiki's being taught. That's where the bookstore is. And we also have healers. And we have 26 this year. We have 26 healers that are all volunteers. They're volunteering to do Reiki. We have lots of mediums. We have reconnective therapy. We have an energetic process called Marconics. We have an indigenous healing couple that are going to be making prayer ties and offering travel blessings. There's spiritual counseling, there's guidance, there's book writing. There's so many different types of healing that you can have in a 20-minute one-to-one session. And that's also on the 14th floor. So you've got the first floor that has all these wonderful presentations and the main conference events, big keynote speakers. It's absolutely incredible. And then you have the 14th floor that is also filled with love, with the exhibits, bookstore, healing, Reiki, pre-conference Reiki activities, etc. And
Yeah.
so it's going to be a blast. It's really, really exciting. And so the Reiki's on August 30th, and then that's the pre-conference with Peter Panagore as well. And then the conference is from Thursday, August 31st through Sunday, September 3rd. And it goes from I think it goes from like 8 o'clock in the morning to pretty much as late as you want. I think the closing is like around 10 o'clock with like before 10 o'clock with a meditation and music, and it's going to be quite something. So I encourage you all to please consider coming to the IANDS annual conference, which this year is on the East Coast, which is very special.
Right. Well, the thing that I want everyone to know is that there's so many levels of healing that a conference like this offers. If you're an experiencer and you don't have the words and you don't feel safe even processing with the people around you, which a lot of times that's what happens, because it's so out of your wheelhouse, the experience, whether it's a spiritually transformative experience, or whether it's a near-death experience or a shared near-death experience. A lot of times you just don't have the vocabulary to integrate the mystical experience that you've had. And that's what intrigued me. That's what got me started 6 years ago with this group, because I met all these people that had words for it, and I could feel they had experienced that field that I had. And you do feel like you're walking into a vortex of love. You really do, when you have 500 people or more that are all waking up each morning hoping to stay in that vibration. It's palpable for sensitives. It's quite palpable.
It's very palpable. Kathy, that was a beautiful explanation. And I also wanted to mention the Experiencer Lounge.
Right.
And the Experiencer Lounge is where you can go and comfortably share your experience. And that's also on the 14th floor. It is phenomenal. And the whole theme this year is love, which, we all need. We all need to have love. And it's wonderful to have love. And it is palpable, just as you
Right,
said.
right. But what I was saying is the healing, whether you take the Reiki course or you go to the Experiencer Lounge or you listen to these amazing researchers some of these people have been researching for over 40 years this topic. So this isn't all a spiritual conversation. It's actually, there's quite a bit of science to it. So you have all these different constructs, but there's also the healing, as Rebecca, as Becky was talking about, the healing portion where you can take a break from the conversations because sometimes you get full listening to all these talks. You can take a break and just go gift yourself some centering, some energy, some peace, some processing, because the whole thing, there's people last year at the event in Salt Lake City, there were people that had just lost their child had committed suicide and they were trying to process. I mean, there's mediums there,
Excuse me.
there's healers there's so many different aspects. So I mean, if you're trying to figure out how to find the joy that you had as a child when you felt fearless and carefree again, this is a great opportunity, because there's so many people operating from that perspective. It's contagious almost.
It is contagious because energy is shared. And with the theme being love and the community being love, it's empowering. And there's a lot of people that can help. And I'm interested in the medical part because that's what I am, but it's not all medical. But there
Right.
are a lot of medical folks that believe and know, and actually, near-death experiences have been declared a medical event, a real medical
Yeah.
event,
Yeah.
and you can receive physicians can receive information on the IONS website. You just need to search medical gap of Kea, and you can receive free information on how you deal with someone that's had a near-death experience, being defined as your body flatlines. So your body is not present, but your consciousness remains. And a lot of times when you come back to this reality, you're filled with love, and maybe you've seen your deceased loved ones and you're trying to figure out how to process it. And so if you search medical gap of care on that home page of ians.org, IANDS.org, you can get this free medical gap of care published by the Johns Hopkins University Press. And so
Right.
it's really quite a valid document, not only for physicians, but for anyone. And so it's really quite exciting, Kathy, for you to have explained earlier how we are coming into a recognition that it's not just biomechanical issues. We're bringing the spiritual in with the physical, and quantum physics is right there.
That's right. Well, it's a holistic future that we're inviting in, because excuse me, that holistic future is much more peaceful and loving than what we've created in the past decades. So we're coming out of that and going into a new opportunity to see light and love as a standard operating procedure. And who doesn't want that? So anyway, thank you so much. We're out of time today. We'll have to do this again, which we will. And I get to see you in about 2 weeks. So
I can't wait.
yeah, me neither. So anyway, thank you all. Please check out Becky's website, which is Rebecca Austill-Clausen. I put it.com. I put it in the everywhere, and I will put it everywhere again. And also the conference for IONS is conference.iands.org. And please, if you can't come in person, please consider getting an online ticket. This is our major fundraiser for the whole organization, and it's what pays for staff and office space and all the things that IAMS does that is so valuable to help people in the world. So just hoping that you'll be a part of it and know that you will come out of the whole experience in much more joy and peace than you started.
Well
Right?
said. Kathy, thank you so very
Thank
much for having me
you.
here. You're awesome.
Oh, you too. Well, ditto back at you. See you soon. Can't wait to give you a hug in person.
Same here. Lots of love, always and forever. Bye-bye.
Yeah.